Dan Myers here to tell you about State Farm Insurance agents Eric Means in Shakopee and Andy Hedlund in Rogers. When it comes to hockey talk, Gorgie and I have you covered. And when it comes to ensuring what is most important to you, Eric and Andy are the very best in the business. Both of these guys are hockey guys. Meansy, he played for the Gophers, while Heads, he played college hockey in Mankato for the Mavericks. Hashtag horns up. Meansy is my State Farm agent, and even though I live on the wrong side of the river, he's able to take care of all my home and auto insurance needs. So if you're like me and you live in that state to the east, yikes. Or maybe you live in Minnesota and you have a lake, home, or property in Wisconsin, call Eric Means in Shakopee and have him take care of you as well. 952-446-7067. That's 952-446-7067. Maybe you're a North Metro guy or gal and want to work with Andy Hedlund out of Rogers. That's okay too. Give him a call. 763-QUOTE-IT is the number. 763-786-8348. Or check him out online at thehockeyagent.com. That's State Farm Insurance and agents Eric Means and Andy Hedlund. Two guys that take care of us, and they'll take good care of you as well. Hello once again, and welcome to the Sieve and the Scribe podcast, presented by Minnesota Hockey Magazine and State Farm Insurance agents Eric Means in Shakopee and Andy Hedlund in Rogers. I am Dan Myers from Wild.com, and with me, as always, my trusty sidekick, co-host, and best friend, even though you pissed me off earlier today at practice, Kevin Gorg. Hello, Kevin. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Dan. Looking forward to the show. We got a good friend of mine on later today. I'm looking forward to that conversation. Love talking high school hockey. We'll digest the Wild and the funk that they're in, and we'll try to glean something from practice today that had a little edge to it. A lot of battle drills, a lot of penalty kills, some face-off work. I still love the coach. I still love the team. I know they're going through a tough time, but we'll get into that as well. But I'm really pumped about the show because of our special guest.
Our special guest, you've teased it, a guy who has broken many hearts along the way, just recently announced his retirement after one heck of a run at Eden Prairie High School. Longtime boys hockey coach there with the Eagles, Lee Smith, joins us here on the show. Lee, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, great to be with you guys.
I didn't know this about Lee until a little bit ago, but Kevin.
Oh, yeah.
He's up. A maverick. He is a maverick. Horns up. There, that is unscripted. Horns up love right there from Lee Smith.
Four seasons arena, though. That's where we were.
A little different setup nowadays. They've gotten big. That program, kudos to Mike Hastings and his crew down there. They're the best team in the country right now. They've got big crowds. They've got a great band in the Maverick machine, and all. College hockey, I think, is better when Minnesota schools are good. And this year, the Gophers are going to be a 1 seed in the tournament. The Mavericks are going to be a 1 seed in the tournament. You've got quality teams in Duluth and St. Cloud. Herb Brooks, as you know, Lee, a long time ago had a vision. I'm going back to probably right before you started in coaching in high school hockey in the early 90s. Before that, Herb Brooks had the vision to get St. Cloud up and running. And he said, the more we can build within this state, the better we're going to be. Now we've got St. Thomas with D1 hockey. And as a high school hockey coach, you have to appreciate the opportunities that these kids now have right outside their back door.
No question about it, Gorgie. He started that satellite training program, and he wanted to keep everything community-based. And, you can see through the growth of the schools, the Andovers, Edina was always big, but Maple Grove, our program, Minnetonka, everybody just expanded, and it's been fun to watch.
Did Myers freeze up? This doesn't happen very often. We don't get to mute Dan Myers very often, but I think that's exactly what happened.
What happened? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got
the Western Wisconsin Wi-Fi here has gone completely off the rails. Lee, I know you. Before we get into everything that you've accomplished at EP, you were at Mankato State, then Mankato State. as an alum, as a guy who spent a lot of time down there, I mean, how much pride do you take? I don't know how often you're able to get back and maybe take in a game, or have been over the last few years, with everything you've had going on. You're awfully busy during the hockey season, but pretty incredible how things have changed, as you said, from the old all seasons arena, the 4 seasons arena, to the days now where the program is downtown and has a world-class building and set up down there.
No question about it. You know, my old coach, Don Bros, had the same vision of starting the Division I program, and did a good job and worked hard in getting that running, and then handed it over to an old teammate, Troy Judding, who continued the process of improving it. And then watching Mike Hastings and Darren Blue, when he was there, come in and just turn that thing over into a juggernaut is pretty exciting. I always felt like that was a spot that could be that way because it's close enough to the cities. You're able to take in a lot more opportunities with the students you can bring in there, and it's a great school.
Yeah, it is a great place to go to school and to play hockey. My sister went there and had a great experience. So how did you get the job way back when at Eden Prairie? I just know that when I started at Burnsville in '93, we played you and we became good friends, going toe-to-toe year after year in the Lake Conference. But how did you get your start as a varsity boys hockey coach at EP?
Well, I always wanted to be in the cities. I left Wilmer, and I'd always come through Eden Prairie and thought that this place had a lot of potential. And so when I did my student teaching, I went to Bloomington, and I was working with the football program and also the hockey program. And I got a call that my former head coach was the head coach now at Eden Prairie. And I went over and I started working with him. I was working both varsity and JV to get some experience and to be part of the program. And as Wayne left, it was an opportunity where I pretty much either had to get the head job at that time or move on, because I was young and eager and didn't want to wait for another coach to come in and pass me by.
It's amazing. What a run, right? I mean, you look at Dan, what he's done. Well, we'll call it 4 decades, even though it's 29 years. He's branched over to cover 4 decades, multiple state championships. And I know, Dan, you're a high school hockey fan. You've watched closely from your days at Eastview High School just how dominant the Eagles were.
Yeah, 29 seasons as a head boys hockey coach. You played in 19 section finals during that time. Won 3 state championships, played in 6 state championship games, made 12 state tournaments, and you finished your career at Eden Prairie with 28 consecutive winning seasons. It's a remarkable resume to me. And I know before we came on here, Lee, you'd mentioned who some of the coaches were at that first Lake Conference meeting you went to. If you could just tell our listeners who those coaches were, and could you have imagined, being a first-year coach at that meeting? And now you get to, you rightfully have earned your place. Your name belongs right next to some of those coaches as one of the all-time great coaches in state high school hockey history.
Well, thank you for that. But, when I started, we had Willard Eichel was in the room, Larry Hendrickson, Jerry Peterson, Tom Satterdahl, and Bart Larson were all there. And I was the quietest guy in the corner, just taking it all in. Also, Carl Davis was there, another great coach. And so and Bruce Johnson. So my first meeting were with probably some of the greatest legends of the high school game, minus some of the guys from the north.
That would have been a fun meeting to just go have at like the local watering hole and just listen to stories the whole afternoon.
Well, I think Larry had maybe been there before he got to the meeting because he was quite vocal. But we all know Larry and love Larry, and it was great to, be part of that room.
I remember that room because I think a year later I showed up at my first meeting and Larry was running late, and Satterdahl and a lot of the coaches always dressed up because this was the end of the year. We were doing our all conference voting. We were seating for some of the sectional play. there was a lot at stake for these meetings. So a lot of the coaches would show up and they'd be fairly dressed up. And of course, Satterdown had those trademarked sweaters he wore. And here comes Larry Hendrickson in the room, full camouflage hunting fatigues. And I'm telling you, you ever seen the movie Rambo First Blood? He had one of those knives like on his belt, and he sat down, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And Satterdown, I've never seen Satterdown get nervous, but we were all taken back by Larry Hendrickson and just the cast of characters. Probably for you, like it was for me, it was just baptism by fire, right? You're a young guy, you're coaching in this conference against these legends. I mean, I got my ass handed to me by Tom Satterdown a year later in the section final by a 10-1 score. But we all were kind of learning as we went, right? We had never done this before.
Correct. We were exactly right. Learning under fire, and Eden Prairie still had gravel roads in that time, and things were changing, and we knew it was going to go the right way. I mean, it was a matter of making sure that we put in the correct skill set underneath to provide and sustain a good program for a long time. And to do that, you had to be able to skate with Jefferson and Edina and Burnsville and Apple Valley. And there were so many really good schools at that time that people don't even know about anymore, because, Burnsville's not even going to have a program, I believe, next year. And it's sad, because that was one of the best rinks to go and play and to see you. So, people don't know the history of even the Lake Conference and what it was. And I mean, it's still great, and the coaches there are still really good. But to see the people we got to go against was really fun.
I know when I was in high school, and I was, again, at Eastview from 1999 until 2003, it was, very different. The Lake Conference was, Jefferson, Kennedy. Lakeville was only one school back then. You guys were, a powerhouse in everything. Eastview was pretty new at that point. We were pretty good at stuff. Egan, Burnsville, and now it's, more of that West Metro Conference. But I wanted to ask you, obviously, whoever takes your place as the next head coach at Eden Prairie is going to be walking into something very different than the situation that you walked into. How fun was that for you, sort of build that program from scratch and essentially have kind of a blank canvas? You had an idea clearly of what you wanted it to become, but to actually up with that plan and then implement it, that had to be pretty fun.
Yeah, no question about it. I think I would always say that I'm a visionary as far as I'm an ideas guy, and I like to look at things and say, okay, how can I make that better? And when I got to Eden Prairie, we had the traces and the starting of some really good players. We just needed more of them. We needed more depth. We also needed more discipline at that time. And so we put those things into place right away. And as we did that, I also upgraded our schedule and tried to create a schedule that was as harder than anybody else's, not worrying about wins and losses, more so using each game as a learning lesson to see what I could do to get our team better for the end of the year.
And Lee, when I think about your time as a head coach at Eden Prairie, and I think about the consistency, Dan went through the numbers, but what I was most impressed by is having played in section finals and coached in section finals. To me, that's the most pressure a high school coach or a high school player will ever face, because all the chips are on the table. At that point, the dream either comes to fruition or it's a nightmare ending where your hearts are broken and you're sat there to pick up the pieces. And there's nothing quite like that in high school hockey. The section final has all that drama. And when I think about your time at Eden Prairie and how much high school hockey I watched, time and time again, you guys would end up in one of the toughest sections. You'd end up in a section final where it was going to be a dogfight. And I got to be honest, Lee, more often than not, you had to go either overtime or multiple overtimes to get to the state tournament. And my question to you is, as a head coach and as a coaching staff, how were you guys able to kind of calm the waters in that nerve-wracking, scary time for those kids where they could go out there and perform at a high level, because your teams won a lot more than they lost?
Yeah, Gorgie, one of the things that I think I did right away was we lost our first 3 section finals I was in, and the last one we lost was a 6 overtime game to Edina in 98. And it was the longest high school hockey game at that stage. And so at that point, I realized that you can no longer just live on a top line or or a top two lines, you got to build depth within. And so I took our program, which was really coming, and then started playing more guys through the course of the year, and also took character over maybe talent as far as some of our last picks. And that seemed to work and help us out in those tight games because there was guys that we could lean on. And and the other thing I'm going to be honest is, I had 16 Mr. Hockey candidates through my 29 years and 3 winners. It's good to lean on your talent, right? And I was always good about listening to them and talking to them and having them on the same page as me. And I think that really helped out in a lot of those battles.
Kevin just mentioned it, the schedule you guys would have, and especially like now, you look at the Lake Conference right now in its new form. It's almost like a mini section tournament or a state tournament every night for you guys out there, isn't it?
No question about it. The beauty of it too is you have the 10 games, but beyond that, you get, we played in 3 tournaments this year. We played against Till and Benilde in a tournament. We played against Grand Rapids, Elk River, and Edina in a tournament. And then we played St. Thomas, Chaska, and Totino Grace in another tournament. So I put us in 3 tournaments in the month of December. And, we played 7 games against teams that were in the state tournament field at the X.
If you had to go back in time, Lee, and I know this is going to be really, really hard for you to answer, and there's a lot of right answers and not many wrong answers, but if you had to go back in time and pick your all-time favorite moment, and it had to be one moment when you were behind the bench coaching the Eagles, and you're like, this is the one moment, no matter how old I get, I'm never going to forget this point, this game, this thing, what would it be?
Kyle Rao's goal in the 2011 championship against Duluth East.
And that was the game. Did he score from his belly at that point? And what was the setup for that? Like how had the game gone to that point?
So this was double overtime, and the puck goes into the neutral zone, and we go D to D, and Kurt Rao comes into the zone and throws one just over the blue line at the net. And the goalie makes the save, but it kind of squirts out, giving him Kyle a foot race with the D-man. And Kyle lays out on his belly and slides and tacks it in. And, there's other great moments, but that one, just because that Duluth East team had played such a good game, and it didn't look good for us for the first 2 periods. And I remember going in harping and saying, our best 17's better than their best 34, which they'd given us at that stage. And we were able to come back and to be able to beat Mike Randolph anytime was a challenge, let alone in the state championship where, which was hard because we're good friends, and to have that be, a memorable moment, good for me and bad for him, is always something out there.
Lee, you coached for 29 years. You've actually taught in the Eden Prairie schools there for 33 years. First of all, what subject do you teach?
Well, I was a 6th grade teacher for most of my career. This year I'm teaching 4th grade as my last year. And I in 6th grade, we kind of taught them all, but I was mainly math and science. And now with 4th grade, I'm teaching all the subjects and enjoying my last year with these youngsters. So they take a lot of energy out of me, though. By Friday, I'm beat.
They keep you young, right? You've knew all along here that this was going to be your last year teaching, and it obviously just came out that you were going to be stepping away as coach. Did you have an idea for a while now that you were going to be done coaching? And if so, just what was that last game, February 26th, like against Prior Lake, as the clock wound down? I'm sure your players probably didn't have any idea what was coming, but maybe in your head, you knew that this was going to be the end. Just how hard was that?
Well, first of all, the decision to leave teaching wasn't that hard because I needed the flexibility because of my wife having a job in Salt Lake and her being able to come back and forth for now on the company's dime. But I knew that I wanted to be out there more with her. So being a teacher doesn't allow for that. The coaching part kind of came out of the fact that, the district kind of wanted to go a different direction when I was not coming back as a teacher. I would love to have maybe had a little more time here, but I guess we kind of walk away, handing them off a good team and a great schedule and giving me an opportunity to look at a different direction as far as where I want to go next as a coach. And, at the end of the day, if there isn't something in the cities that feels right, then I will head to Salt Lake and move with my wife sooner. It's just, we have kids here and they're going to be in college, and I don't really want to leave them quite yet. And my father's still alive and out in Wilmer. And so, I'm contemplating whether it's a Division III assistant or helping somebody else. I know that, I need to do more than just coach high school hockey to be able to stay here. But, my wife isn't in a rush to get me out there, probably because I snore. But, she does want me, down the road, we're looking at it, and she might have a 3-year thing in Salt Lake City. And then we might be having a place here in Arizona.
Well, you'll have options. The one thing I know is whether it's a college program or a high school program, your reputation speaks for itself. And I've coached with you. I've coached against you. I've watched you forever. And universally, I will tell you, and I'll tell our viewers and listeners that there aren't many coaches as well respected and well liked as Lee. A lot of times when you're the big dog and you kick the snot out of teams, people end up really not liking you very much. And Tom Satterdown was a great coach, but there were some people that really didn't care for Tom because he always beat them. With Lee, it's a little bit different. And just the way you ran your program and just the gentleman that you are, people really love you. And so you're going to have options. With that being said, it's got to be weird kind of being a free agent right now. And I'm certain you'll be heading down to St. Paul later this week for the state tournament. As you look at this tournament, I tried to handicap it, and I don't get out to a lot of games with our wild schedule, but I got to tell you, Lee, as I looked at the matchups for the AA tournament, which starts on Thursday, I'm not even sure I could pick a favorite out of this thing. I think you could have 8 different winners. I mean, these games to me, all 4 games for the first time in a long time look like toss-ups.
Yeah, I would say that I've never seen 2 unseeded teams that could possibly be favored. You look at Cretin-Durham Hall, who we played and lost 1-0 and Prior Lake, who we split with. Both teams are well coached. Both teams are very offensive. And if you were to ask me right now, I couldn't pick a winner in that. One reason why is Prior Lake plays so well in the morning. They played Hockey Day, which was a morning game, and they were really good there. And they were also really good in their game against us at noon. So, they kind of have that. They kind of have a good feel for that early game, which is hard to get out of high school kids at times. So that's a dangerous one in there. Your thoughts on that? Same?
I like their line, their top line. I always thought, and I know you know this from coaching in the tournament, but with that TV timeout and the way the games get broken down, your star players can make more of an impact at the tournament than they can in a normal high school game during the regular season because of those bonus timeouts. I just think that Prior Lake's top line is probably as good as any top line in the tournament, but specifically maybe better than Cretin's top line, who's also very good. You factor in 2 coaches that are rookie coaches at tournament time. I think that dynamic plays a huge part. Your point on the early start with high school kids, I think resonates. I would lean Prior Lake's way. We saw them on Hockey Day, and I looked at their record at that point, and I said, my God, is this team going to be dangerous come sectional time? They're a 500 hockey team who looks like a team that could win 25 games in a normal schedule. And I know they had some struggles, and I talked to Coach Pankratz about that and how they had kind of underachieved, but they were always going to be a tough outcome section time, and I think they're going to be tough to beat come Thursday.
Yeah, I can't argue with anything you said. really a fun game to watch. I think it's going to be really an up and down game whichever goalie doesn't have the most nerves, maybe who comes out of that one actually, because they're both going to see a lot of rubber.
Now, you guys have broken down the first matchup of the day, Thursday, Class AA, 11 a.m. Prior Lake, unseeded Prior Lake, was the 4 seed in Section 2AA. Defeated Lee's Eden Prairie Eagles in the section semis by a 4-2 margin. At 1 o'clock Thursday, Edina, unseeded Edina, which is just very strange for me to see that Edina is unseeded. They're playing number 3 seed Maple Grove. Lakeville South, the defending state runner-up, lost to Lee's Eden Prairie Eagles in last year's tournament. They play number 1 seeded Hill Murray. And then the 8 o'clock game, number 5 Andover, potentially the best goaltender in the state. They will play number 4 Moorhead. Lee, I guess first of all, just kind of rattling through these matchups here. You talked about Prior Lake Cretin. What do you see Edina versus Maple Grove? Again, the unseeded Hornets against the number 3 seeded Crimson.
Well, I think when the Hornets are playing their best game, that they could be the best team in the field. They ran into a little bit of a tough spot in the middle of the conference schedule, which we all kind of can have those happen. But their top 2 lines together may be the top 2 groups. And they're playing really well right now for Kurt. He's been there a lot. Maple Grove has a ton of talent up front, and they're big and powerful. So I guess if I would pick Edina in that game, but it wouldn't surprise me either way. I think Maple Grove's another scary team to play. Hill Murray and Lakeville South, we lost to each of those teams both by a goal. Hill Murray, Bill does such a good job, and they play both ends of the rink really well. Lakeville South, very dynamic offensively. Josh has got them doing some stuff at high school hockey that I haven't seen with other groups. They may have the best player along with Alex Bump, but number 4 for Lakeville South is really good. And so that could be a really fun game, unbelievable hockey game. I wouldn't be surprised either way there. Hill Murray has last change. Bill's hard to probably pick in that spot. And then the Moorhead team we saw at Christmas at Prior Lake, they're the most structured team. They're not always the most fun to watch, but John has them play a really good, tight checking hockey game. Their top line's really skilled. And Andover, I haven't seen a lot of. We don't get to see them, but it's their second trip there. Last year, they were the 1 seed, got upset. I think they'll probably even be more focused and more committed to it, and maybe feel a lack of respect as the number 5 seed. I think that's a really good game. I think that could be a 3-2 barn burner.
Real quick follow-up for you, Lee, because I know you took this route last year coming off the runner-up appearance in 2020, kind of sits in the craw of your players for a year, and you get back to that kind of tournament setting. When it comes to Lakeville South, you guys beat them in the state championship last year. You have to think that they're going to be a motivated crew to finish the deal and try and win a state championship this year, especially in a tournament that's so wide open.
No question about it. And the good thing for their sake is they've been in big games now. Like in the past, Lakeville's would get there and people would say, oh, it's Section 1. But no more. Section 1 is a force. And they've done a good job of upgrading their schedule. Their league was good this year. So they're not going to be in awe of it. They're actually probably have more kids that have played in St. Paul now than Hill Murray because they had to sit out last year. And so it's going to be a really good hockey game.
Now we'll pivot to Class A, and I think there are some Cinderella stories here, but it's still, to me, Lee, as I handicap this, I'm not sure how much you've seen any of these Class A teams, but when I look at both Hermantown and Warroad, they are both the teams that are the benchmark year in and year out, that if you're going to win a state championship sooner or later, you've got to go through one or both of those teams to do it, and that's going to be tough for anybody to do because those two teams are probably as good as any AA teams in the state.
No question about it. I mean, we played them all, and I think we didn't play when Zam was playing Hermantown, and they still beat us 5-2. I think of all the teams that we played, they probably have the most depth, the most skill, and are probably the most dangerous team over there. Warroad, I've watched. They're going to be really good in this tournament. I would say be careful with Matamidi, though, over there. They're very well coached. They might have the best goalie in the state, which you'd like, Gorgie. And
I know their head coach is an old goalie. Jeff Pogel was my goalie coach way back in the day at St. Thomas when I played. So you're right. One of their goalies up for the Frank Brimzik. He's one of the 3 finalists. You've got a defensive structured coach in Jeff Pogel. And they play a double-A schedule, right? They play the Hill Murrays. They're not going to be intimidated by anybody they see in St. Paul.
There's no question. Matamidi is going there. The same reason Warroad and Hermantown, they're going there on a mission to win. And there's nothing against the other programs in there. Congratulations. And they've done a lot. But to me, that's a 3-school race for that title, and probably a 1-school race. If they play their best game, I don't see anyone matching up with Hermantown.
I'm with you on that.
Just breaking down the Class A schedule, which gets going on Wednesday at XL Energy Center. The 11 a.m. game, the Monticello Moose will take on the second-seeded Warroad Club at 1 o'clock. Right here, my Mankato East Loyola Cougars, led by our guy, Coach Adam Freeze. They will be taking on the Matamidi Zephyrs, the number 3 seed in that tournament. In the evening, 6 o'clock, New Prague will take on number 1 Hermantown. And at 8 p.m., I want to get Lee's reaction to this, because this, I think, is one of the more fascinating storylines in this tournament, regardless of class. Number 5, Alexandria, and number 4, Minneapolis. It's so great with all the hockey history, guys, that Minneapolis has. A lot of people don't know about it because it's been so long. But Lee, how cool is it to see Minneapolis back in the state tournament?
First of all, I'm so happy for Joe Dzik, because he's put a lot of time and effort to keep players in Minneapolis and not go to the private schools. So I'm really happy for him. You know, in the 80s, they were a power. We had to play Roosevelt, Southwest, Minneapolis West, and I think I said Roosevelt. But we had to, and Washburn, we had to play all those schools. They were all, you know, their own school. And now they're all united, and there's some really tremendous hockey players there. And like I said, I'm really excited for Joe. And, you know, I know his dad isn't around anymore, but I'm sure he's watching down, proud of his son, because he did a lot for the park board for Minneapolis for years.
Super exciting that Minneapolis is in. I guess my final one for you, Lee, would be this. The Wild are going through a really tough stretch right now, and it's a team that looked like a cup contender as recent as maybe 3 weeks ago. And you've coached a lot of really good teams at Eden Prairie. And from a coaching perspective, when your team gets into a rut and when they get quote unquote fragile, which is what Dean Everson said yesterday, and I 100% agree with what the coach said, where when the breaks start to go against you, the team has crumbled recently. What do you do from a coaching perspective to get that team kind of back to where they were? Because you know it's in them. You know they're good enough to do it. But in these tough times, everything seems to go the other way.
Well, first of all, I thought the first period, I thought they were all over Dallas, and then it ends up 1-1. You know, they're you know, puck luck comes and goes, and you want puck luck at the end of the year for sure. But I think, you know, they got to build the confidence back. They have the team of all teams I've ever watched the Minnesota Wild play with, the most fun, the most talent, the most depth. And so I think what I heard you guys talk about earlier, the penalty kill, you know, special teams is so vital, you know, in these close matches. I mean, all these teams are good, but the teams that are scoring on the power play or defending well, they're the teams that have a chance when it's all said and done. And it's good to hear that they're trying to cure that penalty kill. I think it looks like they're getting more aggressive in what they're trying to do, which is good within structure. You know, that was a heartbreaking penalty because it was a shot over the glass that creates a 1-1 game there. And then you go in the locker room, you go from 1-0 playing great to 1-1 wanting to kick the garbage can, you know, right away. So I think right now these guys, even though they're pros, are still human and I always think when they're hurting, you give them love, and when things are going really well, then you gotta give them a little more gas and beat them up a little bit in practice. And I think Dean's a great coach, and watching what he does.
It kind of is a good segue into what my last question is for you, Lee, is someone who's coached at a high level now for 3 decades. I mean, how do you take in a hockey game? Like, do you always have, like, you're watching the Wild game last night, we're recording this here on a Monday afternoon. Like, do you have your coaching hat while you're watching the Wild, or are you able to kind of disconnect and just enjoy it as a fan?
I can never really watch hockey without critiquing it. And
your wife's got to love that.
Yeah, I don't think I'm necessarily trying to coach the Wild, because I'm not qualified for that. But I think I put myself in their shoes and how they're seeing the game, and maybe if they're trying to run matchups or not. What defensemen are out there, or how much they're jumping in the play. And then I also try to watch skill sets, like, are defensemen keeping the puck off their backhand and making the strong play? I love the Wild because they have so many forwards that are lateral, and I love that skill because you can't really teach that. The Casey Middlestats, the Kyle Rouse, the way they can play the game going laterally, and Kaprizov is so prime at that. And so I'm watching that. I also like to watch, I think, how their mannerism is after they give up a goal. Are they right back coaching them, or they ignore them, or how do they handle it? So I try to watch the opponents a little bit more, because I see how the Wild do things all the time.
All right. And then to wrap up real quick here with both of you guys, let's make some predictions. State champion, Class AA. I think both of you guys said you're on Hermantown, right?
Yes.
I'm going to be contrarian, and I'm going to take Matamidi. I love the AA schedule they play. I love how they're coached. I love the goaltender this time of year. I'll take Matamidi. Class AA. Kevin first. Who do you got?
I like what Lee said about Kirk Giles and Edina, and there is just something about the green and gold at this time of year. They are doubly tough to beat. I think they're playing their best hockey. That coaching staff has been there and done that, and I think Lee knows that matters come tournament time. As a Burnsville guy, it's going to hurt me a little bit to do this, but I'm eating my cake. I'm taking the Hornets.
Yeah, I'm gonna go along with you. I'm gonna take the Hornets. My sleeper, who isn't really the sleeper because of the number 1 seed, but I'll take Bill Lechner and Hill Murray as my second place.
Well, you know what? You said that it's as wide open this year as maybe any other year. So you know what? Even the number 1 seed is a sleeper this year. I should note, by the way, Mankato East, it's hard to go against my Cougars, but I am going to go with the Cougars in AA. I like Lakeville South in the revenge factor in a wide open tournament. It stinks, Kevin, that we're going to be on the road this weekend. We won't be able to follow along or make it down to the XL, maybe on Saturday for Championship Saturday. But Lee Smith, thank you so much. A guy that knows a thing or two about state tournaments, have had so much success. Congratulations on 29 years at Eden Prairie. And even more importantly than that, on a wonderful career molding the young minds of students, 33 years there. Thanks for joining us. Can't wait to see what happens next for you, Lee, and where you end up next season.
Hey, thank you guys. It's been great to talk to you guys, and I have all the respect in the world for you and Gorgie as my friend for decades. So thanks, guys.
Have a good one.
You're the absolute best. I can't wait to see what's next. I know it'll be special. You're just a wonderful, wonderful guy. And we're all better here in Minnesota for having you involved in high school hockey for this many years at Eden Prairie. You're just a quality human being. And I'm very proud to call you my friend.
Thanks,
Lee.
Lee Smith, the former head coach of the Eden Prairie Eagles. Wow, what a great conversation with a guy like him, Kevin. We'll break that down and we'll talk Wild hockey here as episode 9 of the Sieve and the Scribe podcast, presented by Minnesota Hockey Magazine and State Farm Insurance agents Eric Means and Andy Headland continues. Zach Halverson is our producer. Let's get a word from our sponsor.
Sports fans, come on down to Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub for one of the best dining experiences around. Great food, an awesome staff, and amazing atmosphere is waiting for you just minutes from XL Energy Center on West 7th in St. Paul. Whether you're watching a game, attending a concert, or just out for a good time, Tom's is the place to be. Enjoy twofers during all live Minnesota Wild games, Viking games, and Packer games. Now serving breakfast on Sundays until 2 p.m. While dining, check out the collection of over 400 pieces of hockey memorabilia. Having a get-together? Let them cater your event. They have room for you in their newly remodeled back bar with extra parking in their brand-new parking lot. It's Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub. Give them a call, 651-292-9916. That's 651-292-9916 to schedule your next event. And check them out on the web at tomreeds.com. And if you see Tom, don't mention Ken Dryden.
The Functional Neurology Center is a Minnetonka-based clinic staffed by a caring and progressive team of chiropractic neurologists who are experienced in treating post-concussion syndrome, chronic pain, dizziness, whiplash, migraine, and performance enhancement. They are the concussion doctors that you can trust for your comprehensive brain health in Minnesota and who have helped many local professional hockey players that include Mark Parrish, Brock Nelson, Zach Parisi, and Tyler Nanny. The FNC combines innovative technological therapies with manual therapy to improve human function.
My name is Mark Parrish, and I played hockey for 15 years and professionally, and I had some concussions, some head issues. We heard about Dr. Schmo, and we're certainly glad I did, because the difference from not just session to session during the day, but from day to day has been drastic. And just with suffering from sleep depravity for years, the last 3-4 nights I've slept like a baby and slept again like I did before I had kids, for crying out loud.
You can find them online at thefnc.com.
Lee Smith, Eden Prairie, and we talked about this, Kevin. It's, as an Eastview guy, it's really hard for me to like an Eden Prairie guy. Again, used to rip our hearts out in everything, not just hockey, because we actually had some decent hockey teams back in the day when I was in school, but football specifically, which was, of course, what I played. And but what a wonderful human being. 29 years. Again, just read that resume for folks that maybe missed it the first time. 3 state championships, 3 state runners-up, 12 state tournaments, 28 consecutive winning seasons, a streak that continued this year, his final one, which ended February 26th at Braemar, 4-2 loss to Prior Lake, who, of course, is in the state tournament this week. Section Coach of the Year in Class 2A, or Class Section 2AA or 6AA. They've changed sections 12 times, Kevin, the Section Coach of the Year, and the 2009 John Mariucci Coach of the Year in Class AA. More than 540 wins. Just a picture of excellence out there in a sport in Minnesota, Kevin, that we all know and love, but there's so many good teams year in, year out. You have that giant target on your back as one of those best top teams in the state, and they just keep on trucking in Eden Prairie.
They do, and I'll just say this, because I think if people have tuned into this podcast and had a chance to really listen to Lee, they can just feel the passion he has for the game. And high school coaches don't do it for the glory or the money. They do it because they love the game and they love the kids. And that's why he was a teacher. That's why he was a coach. And he got a little emotional at the end, because it's hard to say goodbye when you build a program from scratch. When he started Eden Prairie, it wasn't Eden Prairie like we have now. A little bit different back then. And the numbers speak for themselves. He's one of the greatest coaches in the history of high school hockey in this state. But I'm going to tell you right now, I don't say this lightly. He was better away from the rink and better off the ice than he was at it. And he was a Hall of Famer at his craft. Just that kind of person. That's the kind of respect I have for Lee. Just an outstanding friend and just a great human being. And for the people that were lucky enough to have their kids play there, they got coached by the kind of guy you'd want to be a mentor to your child. That's the kind of guy I would want my kids to be learning from every day. They did it with class. They played the right way. And, by the way, he knows an awful lot about the game and knows how to win. So it's the best of both worlds. And it was just fun. I could talk all day with him. I love his knowledge. I love how he sees the game. I love the question that you asked at the very end of how he takes in a Wild game or how he watches hockey. And I wanted to know what his thoughts were on the Wild, because I know from getting text messages throughout the season that he watches these guys and he has a lot of respect for Dean Evison and this coaching staff. So it was fun to hear what he had to say.
Yeah, I know it's interesting when I'm watching a non-Wild game, or if I'm down in Mankato like I was this past weekend watching Minnesota State play, or if I were going to be around watching high school hockey this week, sometimes it's hard to turn off how I watch a Wild game, which is, clearly very different than a coach would or a player would, but it's hard to kind of just be a fan. And sometimes that's nice. Just throw on a game and just enjoy it for what it is. Just a tremendous guy, though, and to a man, actually. I know you know Lee very well. I've met Lee on one occasion very quickly in passing, so I don't know him very well other than what we just had this conversation. But I know people that do know him besides you, and they all say the exact same thing. More than anything else, a world-class human being. And so you always hope for good things to happen to good people. And we know wherever Lee ends up next season, it's going to be a lot of fun to see whatever challenge he chooses to take on next.
Yeah, he'll well for himself. He'll have multiple opportunities. He's just terrific at his craft, and whoever gets him will be lucky to have him. I will say that much, and can't wait to see what the next chapter is for Lee. Like me, we're both on the back nine of life. We don't know how far we are on the back nine, but we're certainly we've turned the corner here, and we're on the second half of the slate. So it'll be good to see. But I think anybody that's watching this or listening to this can know that he's doing it for the right reasons. He's got the love of the game, and boy, does he have the knowledge of the game. He really knows how to bring out the best in his teams because of that. So yeah, and hopefully we working with the Wild day in, day out, we'll see some improvement, because it's been a tough couple of weeks. You're writing, me on the TV side. Our jobs are always the most fun when the team is winning. The guys are most excited to talk to you. It's just a different atmosphere when things aren't going well, and they're a class bunch. Today was, I thought, a really interesting practice to watch, and I thought the conversations with Evison, Spurgeon, and Foligno after practice were super insightful to what they're going through. But I think fans have to realize that there's going to be stretches where teams lose their way. This is one of them. Let's just hope they can pull themselves out in time to get back where they need to be.
We are going to put a bow on the show and build off of this Wild talker here momentarily. Let's squeeze in one more quick break, get a word from our sponsor. We'll be right back. The Sieve and the Scribe want to thank one of our The Sieve and the Scribe want to thank one of our founding sponsors, Tim Cortez Studio, for supplying the artwork for our podcast. Cortez is a famed artist and former Gopher goaltender whose work is prominently displayed on the exterior of Duluth's Heritage Sports Center in a series of 20-foot by 34-foot banners representing commitment, dedication, courage, honor, hard work, teamwork, integrity, and sportsmanship. Check out his art at www.timcortez.net. That's TIMCORTES.net, or follow Tim Cortez Studio on Facebook, where you can find commission work for the United States Hockey Hall of Fame and the UMD Bulldogs championship teams. Email timcortezstudios@gmail.com for more information.
Hey, pal, you already know that CrankyApe.com is the coolest auction site on the web for everything that rolls, floats, or has an engine. But did you know we'll also sell your toys for you? Why deal with sketchy characters, tire kickers, and no-shows when you can have the ape do it? It's a heck of a lot easier, and if you're not built like me, a lot safer too. Just go to CrankyApe.com and click on the blue burst. I'll take it from there. CrankyApe.com. Why monkey around anywhere else?
You love that Cranky Ape.
I love that Cranky Ape.
We got to get you a Cranky Ape t-shirt or something like that.
I think he's just fantastic.
He is outstanding. This is episode 9 of the Sieve and the Scribe podcast, presented by Minnesota Hockey Magazine and State Farm Insurance agents Eric Means and Shakopee and Andy Hedlund. Thanks to those guys, as always, as well as our producer, Zach Halverson. We'll put a bow here with a little Wild talk. And you mentioned it before the break, Kevin. This team right now, to me, every team goes through stretches over the course of the season where the wins aren't coming. Unfortunately for Minnesota, so many of these losses have come in regulation, because this is just a team where I think if you mix in a couple, overtime losses, a shootout loss here and there, even that would provide a little bit of a different feel right now. This team seems like it could just use like a 3 or 4 day break right now. Like just get away, clear the head. Unfortunately for the Wild, you're not going to get that break because there's no give, no let up in this schedule for the next couple months. How much would a win, as we record this here on Monday, March 7th, how much would a win against the New York Rangers tomorrow night at home, you think, just help alleviate the pressure that this team is very clearly feeling right now?
I think it would matter a lot more than a win against a team like Philadelphia. No disrespect to the Flyers and all of our good friends, from Chuck Fletcher to Brent Flair to Mike Yeo to Torch to all the guys. This win would matter more. Philadelphia is a team that's really having a tough year. The Rangers are a quality team with maybe the best goaltender in the National Hockey League right now. So this would be the kind of benchmark win that can put some wind in their sails and get their confidence back where it wants to be, because it's kind of a perfect storm yesterday. You got Ryan Suter back here, so that storyline is kind of bubbling behind the scenes. You've got a team that, as recent as a couple weeks ago, was double-digit points behind you. Now they've crept within 2. Lee talked about how well the Wild looked for the first 19 minutes of that period. Penalty kills gone bad. That did flip the script. It was a sequence of not only a power play goal, but a review that led to another power play. And so not only do you go in the locker room 1-1 after being the better team throughout most of that first period, but now you've got to go back out there with that penalty kill that's gone pear-shaped, and against a hot Dallas team with a power play that's clicking, you could kind of see it coming. And so this is a situation where it's not a divisional team. It's a team you've had success against here as recently as this year with a big win on the Henrik Lundqvist night. So I think it's a perfect setup. You've got all your big gunners back. It might even be Jordan Greenway back in the mix after watching him at practice today. So I think it's a really great opportunity. I think the Wild are going to play well.
Will be interesting to see whether Jordan Greenway is back. Now, I wanted to talk to you. I'm writing a story right now for Wild.com. Will be up later this afternoon at some of the 6-on-5 success this team has had. And I asked Dean about this today, and he gave kind of a, I write in the article, he's kind of the never too high, never too low coach. So, of course, I come in, hey, coach, you have a historically good 6-on-5. And his response is, well, it means we're losing. So, which it's not untrue, but I wanted to get your reaction to this because, we all know it's been good. They scored twice last night, turned a 4-1 game actually into a 4-3 hockey game with almost 2 minutes left. I mean, there wasn't like there was, 15 seconds left. They had a legitimate chance, offensive zone face-off down a goal to actually tie that hockey game. 17 6-on-5 goals this season for Minnesota. And that sounds like a lot. That's because it is a lot. The team that has second most in the NHL right now, the Tampa Bay Lightning, has 10. And that number would lead the NHL most seasons. Since 2009, 2010, 5 teams over that, call it 15 years, 5 teams have reached double-digit 6-on-5 goals in an 82-game season. Minnesota has 17. The second most during that stretch, the 2015-16 Toronto Maple Leafs had 12. And that's over 82 games. There's still 28 games left in this season for Minnesota. So you want to talk about, yes, not an ideal situation that you've got 6-on-5, but Minnesota's been really, really good at it. In your mind, and I asked this question, Dean, I'll ask it to you. Is there something you're seeing in those situations that Minnesota is doing or excelling at where it's allowed them to make that the threat that it is this season?
It's a great question. I had this question posed to me at a dinner gathering last night while we were watching the game. Some friends wanted to know my opinion. It's twofold for me. Number one, it's the Darby Hendrickson influence. He's the coach that kind of draws up when you see that timeout, when they're kind of looking at the whiteboard and kind of drawing things up. They've got the analytics to back up Darby's coaching, that if you're patient and you control the zone for at least 30 seconds in a 6-on-5 situation, at some point you will get a grade A chance. And Darby's perspective, along with Dean Evason's, is teams sometimes force it too much and just throw the puck away at the net, thinking they've got to hurry to get that shot up because the clock's ticking down. What the Wild have done is become a more patient team, and they've waited for that grade A chance. And the difference between this Wild team and any other Wild team I've watched is high-end talent. There's a reason Tampa Bay is second on that list. They're back-to-back Cup champions with a ton of big-time talent on the front end. Kirill Kaprizov, Kevin Fiala, Matt Zuccarello, Matt Boldy. These are the players that are just starving for an open look. 5-on-5, they a lot of times don't get it. 6-on-5, sooner or later, there's a breakdown, and they get the time and space. And when you give Kirill Kaprizov, like we saw yesterday, the entire slot and all that time, he's not going to miss. And so Minnesota finally has the type of team where they have the high-end talent to make the most of it. And I love the coaching perspective of the more patient look. And they are great at rotating that puck from high to low, from east to west, to spread out those 5 players that they're attacking 6-on-5. And confidence, man. They just feel like they can get it done. So they're comfortable, and it's a nice feather to have in your hat. I just hope this week with the 4 games they've got that we're not pulling the goalie in 3 of these 4 games again.
You want to know how high level of a mind Kevin Gorg is? You basically just said in really simple forms what Marcus Foligno told me as to why the 6-5 is so good. And I know you were not privy to that conversation because you were chatting with Jared Spurgeon when I had the same conversation with Marcus Foligno. It's the same thing he said. These teams out there that want to just fire away. Minnesota's taking that patient approach. And one of the side benefits of that too, Kevin, is you tire that team out. That team is defending for 30 seconds, 45 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of gaining control and, maybe skating it to center and take an aim at a net, you know what? Their prime thing is they just want to get the puck the hell out of the zone and get a line change, which, offers Minnesota more of an opportunity to go reset up in the offensive zone. Now, is there anything that Minnesota can take 6-on-5 to try and help a power play right now that we've seen it? It's been really good at times this season. It's been really bad at times this season. It doesn't really seem like there's been much middle ground, but is there something, a trait they can maybe take from this 6-on-5 and transform into the 5-on-4 to maybe have a little more success in that area?
Well, I think in a 5-on-4 situation, they've got to be a little more aggressive. I think it's just the opposite. 6-on-5, because the team has the empty net yawning at them, and if you just throw the puck away, you're giving up likely the chance they can put the puck in the open net. 5-on-4, you're going to want to get that puck to the net because that's when you pressure a penalty kill. And I think they've passed up really good looks at the net, and I think they need to get back to basics. You've got a guy in Joel Eriksson, and I'm so lucky that I get to watch so many of these games like I did on this last road trip, up on the glass, right in one of the attacking zones. This guy gets cross-check after cross-check, and he will not move. You've got great net front presence. The way to use that to your advantage is to get the damn puck to the net. And I think watching a team that's kind of struggled here recently in the power play, they've been looking for that absolutely perfect setup, and it just hasn't been there.
Now, when it comes to special teams, the big talker of late has actually been the penalty kill. Really been a thorn in the Wild side here over the last handful of games, clicking somewhere in the low 60s in terms of percentage, which you're not going to win. You cannot win giving up 1 or 2 power play goals against every single game. And Kevin, we saw it last night right away. First power play, Minnesota, fantastic. First period in that game. Looks like they're going to take a 1-0 lead into the intermission. The PK for about the first minute of that kill looked really good. And then there's one mistake and it just ends up in the back of the Wild's net. It seems like that is the theme right now. One small mistake ends up getting amplified, tenfold.
3 areas of concern on the penalty kill. We've been watching this rather closely. Number one is when you get the chance to clear it, you've got to clear it. Go back and watch the second power play goal Dallas scored to give them the lead in the second period. Minnesota had 3 separate opportunities to clear the puck and did not do so. That has to change. Number 2, their rotations, i.e. when you're moving in an attacking form, what you want to do with this team, you've got mobile defensemen you want to attack. You've got to cover the middle of the rink. The weak side play that goes from dot to dot cannot happen. You've got to take that away. And the final thing is, and I love these 2 guys, they're my guys, but goaltending has to be better. You cannot give up juicy rebounds. You've got to make these saves and control your rebounds to make life easier on the penalty killers. There's no question. The most important person on any penalty kill is the guy between the pipes. And so it's a combo platter, clear the puck, take away the east-west passing through the slot, dot to dot, and we need to get better goaltending from Talbot and Kakkonen. these things a lot of times will go in cycles. They've gone through a down cycle together. All those areas have gone the wrong way here in the last couple of weeks. Now they've got to cycle back up. You've got to get back to the mean. It's been an eye-opener. They've been working on it as recently as today's practice, which is Monday. And I think most likely we'll see Cam Talbot in goal tomorrow night. And I got to tell you, Dan, Kakkonen would have been the guy started yesterday, but I think that the message was sent to Cam Talbot. Like, if you want to be the guy, let's elevate that game. And he's a fierce competitor. Nobody works harder off the ice. I believe in Cam Talbot. If this team's going to be a playoff team and go somewhere, I still believe that that's got to be the guy. And I think he will be the guy. And I think against a team that he played for, oh yeah, he'll be ready to go tomorrow night.
Looking at things, at least from yesterday, nothing really Capo Kakkonen could do on the first goal. I thought the challenge was a worthy challenge. Didn't go Minnesota's way. Got to have the second, third, and fourth goal. I think if you got Capo Kakkonen in an honest moment, he'd probably tell you the same thing. Now, coming up for Minnesota, a game Tuesday against the New York Rangers, a road trip later this week to Detroit and Columbus, and then a 9-game homestand. 9 times, Kevin, Minnesota will play consecutively at home. That is a franchise record.
It starts with number 9's jersey going into the rafters.
That is very fitting. I didn't even think about that. That will be fun. If you're planning on going to that puck drop is 6:00, but the ceremony for Mikko Koivu starts at 5. So you are going to want to be in your seats no later than 5:00. I think doors open that day at 3:45 at XL Energy Center. That's going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun, Kevin. Nashville will be in town that day. That is Sunday. Boston, Chicago, Vegas, Vancouver. Old friend Bruce Boudreau will be bringing the Canucks to town. They're playing very well for Bruce. Columbus, Colorado, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh come to town after that. So 9 games. Minnesota will be at home for the better part of 3 weeks. Maybe that's exactly what this team needs to get sort of back on track. Hopefully get back on track before then. But I would have to say, Kevin, probably where this season is going to be make or break, right, is how that 9-game homestand goes.
This next 3 weeks, and I'm including the 2 games to Detroit and Columbus, this next 3 weeks off what we've just seen in the last couple weeks will basically dictate whether they're in the playoffs, A and B, or out, and then whether they're able to get back into a position where they can have some home ice advantage in that first round. That's still all on the table for this team. They've traditionally been a very good team in St. Paul, including this year. The crowd plays a role there. These guys seem to feed off that crowd. I still think this is going to be a good sequence for Minnesota, and I think this is a pivotal week. You've got 4 games this week, really good Ranger team on the front end, really good Nashville team on the back end, 2 teams on the road that are better than the 2 teams you played last week on the road, and you were all out to beat Philly, and you lost in Buffalo. So this is a week where 2-2 is a must. If you can somehow get 3 out of 4, you set momentum up in its position for that 9-game stand. And now you can go 7-2 and put yourself right back into that home ice slot. So there's a lot to play for. There's a lot they're going to have to earn. Nobody's going to feel sorry for this team. They're going to have to pick up themselves from the bootstraps and go out there and get back to the team they were. We know they're good enough to do that. Now it's just a matter of them getting it all figured out between their ears.
A couple bits of good news here before we put a final bow on this thing. Colorado running away with the Central Division right now. In my opinion, the best team in the NHL. Frankly, again, my opinion, not close. I think Colorado is the class of the league this year. But beyond that, Kevin, St. Louis currently sits in second place as we record this, 71 points. That's 4 points ahead of Minnesota, which has a game in hand. So despite the tough stretch here, really since the Winter Classic, I know there was, a point streak in there after that. Call it since the All-Star break, probably more specifically.
Yeah.
A down stretch here since the beginning of February. Still only 4 points out of second place in a home ice slot here. I know it's gotten a lot tighter than Wild fans probably wanted to. And the other thing, we talked about some of the things that have gone wrong. it's not like this team has been showing up and getting outclassed or outcompeted on a nightly basis. This team is still putting it on the line. This team is still within a goal last night with 2 minutes left. It's little small parts of the game right now. It's not the game in its entirety that has gone south for this team, which means, you know what? If you can fix one of those aspects, if you get a little better goaltending, you fix that PK, you start clicking on the power play, things can flip the other direction in a real hurry.
They're healthy. And to me, that's the biggest thing right now. If you're going to get back into a position where you're going to be competing for home ice in the playoffs and be a bigger factor come the postseason, you got to have your horses. That's the most important thing to me. You're right, Dan. It's little details, but they've got all their guys. It isn't like Kaprizov's on the shelf or Zuccarello's out. They're healthy right now. They've proven with this group how good they can be. Nothing's changed in my opinion. And you've got a little bonus in that in the next couple of weeks, Bill Guerin, who I think is pretty sharp general manager, might make some subtle changes here. Maybe he won't. But I do think that's some leverage that you have right now. And I think that there are some improvements that can happen. And if you can stay healthy, you've got all these home games. So I don't think it's time to panic yet. There is cause for concern. No question. After yesterday's game, we're getting closer to panicking. I'm just going to be honest. But we're not there yet. And we know how good this team can be. And so I think this is one of those weeks where I believe, after being at practice today, conversing with some of the players, hearing the head coach, I am in full belief that this will be a much better week this week than we saw last week.
NHL trade deadline, you mentioned it. 2 weeks from today, Minnesota will play 6 games between now and then, and you better believe that those 6 games and the result of those 6 games could have a big effect on what Bill Guerin decides to do on that day. Real quick, going back to the 6-on-5, Kevin, my research today, Minnesota, 8 points. They have 8 additional points in the standings because of their success with the 6-on-5 this year. You think back to the win on Hockey Day over Chicago, came with an empty net goal. Got a point in Colorado and lost in a shootout. Got a point in Tampa Bay and lost. So even, games where you come back and lose late, those points matter. And we see right now just how much those points matter. So Kevin, that's it for episode 9 of the Sieve and the Scribe. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been so fun. Have fun grinding on the Players' Championship, and we'll see you at the rink tomorrow.
Should be good. And if you're out there and you're playing fantasy football, which Dan and I love to do, a word to the wise. Next year when you get to your draft, do not draft Calvin Ridley. Sounds like he bet on football games last year, like Pete Rose bet on baseball. He will not be on the football field in the year 2022-23 for the Atlanta Falcons. Whoops-a-daisy. Just a little nugget there for our fantasy football fans here on the Sieve and the Scribe.
Well, we bring a little bit of everything to the table here on the Sieve and the Scribe. Our thanks to former Eden Prairie coach and a legendary man and individual, Lee Smith, for joining us here on episode 9 of the Sieve and the Scribe podcast, presented by Minnesota Hockey Magazine and State Farm Insurance, and agents Eric Means in Shakopee and Andy Hedlund in Rogers. For Kevin Gorg, for myself, Dan Myers, and for our esteemed producer, Zach Halverson, thank you to him, and we'll see you next week on the Sieve and the Scribe.
Dave's Sports Shop in Fridley, Minnesota, the top hockey shop in the North Metro since 1969. Specializing in custom fit hockey gear, top quality skate sharpening. We've got a full lineup: CCM, Bauer, Sherwood, True, Vaughn, and many more. We also offer used and new skates. We'll take those old skates in on trade for your new skates. Dave's Sports Shop, where the winners shop. Come find out why. Mention this ad to get your free skate sharpening.